When my daughter stole my $85,000 watch after my hip surgery, I felt helpless. By Christmas, I had exposed her entire theft ring. You won't believe what I did next. Before watching this, subscribe to the channel and tell me where you're listening from in the comments. My name is Dorothy Hayward. I am 63 years old. 3 months ago, I had hip replacement surgery. I thought my biggest worry would be learning to walk again. I was wrong. My biggest worry should have been trusting my own daughter. The day I came home from the hospital, everything felt different. I was weak, tired, and needed help with simple things. My daughter Sarah moved in to take care of me. She cooked my meals, helped me to the bathroom, and brought me my medication. I felt grateful. I thought she was being a loving daughter. But 2 weeks into my recovery, I noticed something was missing. My watch. Not just any watch, my Patek Philippe worth $85,000. It was the last gift my husband gave me before he passed away. I kept it in the same spot on my dresser for 15 years. When I asked Sarah about it, she looked confused. She said maybe I moved it somewhere and forgot. She suggested the pain medication might be affecting my memory. I felt a chill run down my spine because I knew exactly where I had left that watch, and I knew my mind was perfectly clear. That night, lying in bed unable to sleep, I realized something terrible. My own daughter had stolen from me while I was at my weakest, and she was making me doubt my own sanity to cover it up. The woman I had raised and loved had become a thief in my own home. I built my life from nothing. When I was young, I started a small jewelry import business from my kitchen table. I worked 16-hour days, traveled to trade shows, and slowly built something real. By the time I was 40, I owned 3 jewelry stores and had more money than I ever dreamed of. Sarah was born when I was 28. Her father left when she was 3, so it was just me and her for most of her childhood. I wanted to give her everything I never had. Private schools, dance lessons, summer camps. I thought I was being a good mother. Maybe I was too good. Sarah grew up expecting the best of everything. Designer clothes, expensive cars, luxury vacations. When other kids got part-time jobs, Sarah got credit cards. When other kids learned about saving money, Sarah learned about spending it. I told myself I was providing for her future. Really, I was creating a monster. My husband David came into our lives when Sarah was 15. He was kind, steady, and good with money. He tried to teach Sarah about responsibility. She resented him for it. When he gave me that Patek Philippe watch for our 10th wedding anniversary, Sarah rolled her eyes. She said it was just showing off. After David died 5 years ago, Sarah changed. She became sweeter, more attentive. She visited more often and helped with my business. I thought grief had matured her. I thought she finally understood what family meant. But looking back now, I realized something else. She was studying me, learning my habits, my routines, my vulnerabilities. She was planning. The woman who stole my watch wasn't a stranger who broke into my home. She was someone I had loved, provided for, and trusted completely. And that betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain from my surgery. But I wasn't prepared for how low she would go to cover her tracks. After the watch disappeared, I started paying closer attention. That's when I noticed other things missing. A diamond bracelet from my jewelry box. A set of gold earrings David had given me. Small things at first, items I might not notice right away. But then I found something that made my blood run cold. My checkbook had transactions I didn't remember making. $500 here, $800 there, all written in handwriting that looked like mine, but wasn't quite right. Sarah had been practicing my signature. When I confronted her about the checks, she didn't deny it. Instead, she sat me down and spoke to me like I was a confused child. She said the pain medication was making me forget things. She said I had been asking her to help with bills and errands. She even showed me a notebook where she claimed I had written down instructions. I stared at that notebook, seeing my own handwriting twisted into lies. Sarah had been planning this for months. Every time I was drowsy from medication, every time I napped, she was building her case against my memory, making me doubt my own mind. The worst part came during my physical therapy appointment. Sarah told the therapist, right in front of me, that I had been confused lately. She said she was worried about my mental state. The therapist looked at me with pity and concern. I felt like a stranger in my own life. That night, alone in my bed, I cried harder than I had since David's funeral, not just because of what Sarah had stolen, but because of what she had taken from me. My dignity, my confidence, my sense of reality. She had made me question everything about myself. I was trapped in my own home, by my own body, being robbed by my own daughter. And the most terrifying part was that she was making everyone believe I was losing my mind. I felt completely helpless, completely alone. But sometimes, when you hit rock bottom, that's when you find the strength to fight back. The morning I decided to fight back, I waited until Sarah left for her errands. Then I made a phone call that would change everything. I called a private investigator named Marcus Reed. I had used his services years ago for my business, and I knew he was trustworthy. Marcus came to my house that afternoon while Sarah was out. I told him about the missing watch, the forged checks, and Sarah's attempts to make me seem confused. He listened carefully, taking notes. When I finished, he looked me straight in the eye and said, "Mrs. Hayward, your mind is sharp as ever. Let me find out what your daughter is really doing." Within 3 days, Marcus called me with his first report. Sarah wasn't just stealing from me. She had been seen at luxury stores, buying expensive purses and jewelry with cash. She had also visited 3 different pawn shops in the past month. But the most shocking discovery was yet to come. Marcus had followed Sarah to a high-end consignment store downtown. There, displayed in the front window, was my Patek Philippe watch. The price tag read $75,000. Sarah had sold my most precious possession for $10,000 less than it was worth. When I saw the photos Marcus took, my hands shook with anger. But for the first time in weeks, I also felt something else: hope. Because now I had proof. Now I had evidence that I wasn't losing my mind. My daughter was a thief, and I was going to stop her. The hunt for the truth had only just begun. Marcus worked like a detective building a criminal case. Over the next 2 weeks, he gathered evidence I never could have found on my own. Bank records showed Sarah had opened 3 different accounts using my personal information. She had been depositing cash regularly, always in amounts just under $10,000, to avoid bank reporting requirements. The investigation revealed something even more disturbing. Sarah wasn't working alone. Marcus discovered she had been visiting elderly clients from my old jewelry stores, people who trusted our family name. She was convincing them to let her appraise their valuable pieces, then never returning them. Marcus showed me photographs of Sarah meeting with an older man named Mr. Chen. He was a longtime customer who had bought his wife's engagement ring from my store 20 years ago. According to Marcus, Sarah had taken Mr. Chen's wife's diamond necklace for cleaning and inspection 3 weeks ago. It was now sitting in another pawn shop across town. The scope of Sarah's theft was staggering. Marcus estimated she had stolen over $200,000 worth of jewelry and cash in just 6 months. She had turned my recovery period into her personal crime spree, using my reputation and connections to rob innocent people. But the evidence that made me angriest was a notebook Marcus found in Sarah's car. It contained detailed notes about my daily routine, my medication schedule, and even my physical therapy appointments. She had been studying me like a target, planning exactly when to strike. Armed with all this proof, I knew it was time to confront my daughter directly. But I wasn't prepared for just how desperate she had become. The day I confronted Sarah, I waited until she came home from another one of her shopping trips. She walked in carrying designer bags, smiling like nothing was wrong. I was sitting at the kitchen table with Marcus's files spread out in front of me. "Sarah," I said calmly, "we need to talk." When she saw the photographs and bank records, her face went completely white. For a moment, she just stood there frozen. Then she tried to lie her way out of it. She claimed the elderly clients had given her their jewelry as gifts. She said the bank accounts were for managing my finances while I recovered. She even insisted that my watch had been damaged, and she was getting it repaired as a surprise. Every word was a desperate attempt to keep her story alive. But when I showed her the photograph of my watch in the consignment store window, something in her broke. She started crying and begging for forgiveness. She said she had gambling debts and needed the money quickly. She promised to pay everything back if I would just give her time. I looked at my daughter, this woman I had raised and loved, and felt nothing but sadness, not just for what she had done to me, but for what she had become. A liar, a thief, someone who would steal from her own mother while she was helpless. "Sarah," I told her quietly, "you need to leave my house tonight." She stared at me in shock, probably expecting me to forgive her like I always had before. But this time was different. This time, she had gone too far. And that's when I learned the confrontation was just the beginning of her crimes. 2 days after Sarah moved out, I got a call that made my stomach drop. It was from my bank's fraud department. They told me someone had opened multiple credit lines using my Social Security number and personal information. The total debt was over $750,000. I knew immediately who had done it. Sarah hadn't just stolen my jewelry and forged my checks. She had stolen my entire identity. Credit cards, personal loans, even a mortgage on a property I had never seen. She had been building this financial house of cards for months, maybe years. The worst part was discovering how she had done it. Sarah had access to all my personal documents during my recovery: birth certificates, tax records, insurance papers. While I was sleeping and healing, she was photocopying my life and using it to destroy my financial future. But Marcus uncovered something even more shocking. Sarah wasn't just targeting me and a few elderly customers. She was running an organized theft ring. She had convinced 3 other women to help her steal from senior citizens across the city. They would pose as caregivers, house cleaners, or family friends to gain trust and access. The scope of their operation was massive. They had stolen over $2 million worth of jewelry, antiques, and cash from dozens of elderly victims. My own daughter was the leader of a criminal enterprise that preyed on people exactly like me. When I realized the full extent of what Sarah had done, I knew this was no longer just about getting my watch back. This was about stopping a predator who happened to be my child. The next morning, I called a lawyer who specialized in elder fraud. Her name was Jennifer Walsh, and she had been fighting cases like mine for over 20 years. When I showed her Marcus's evidence and the bank records, she didn't hesitate. "Mrs. Hayward," she said, "your daughter has committed multiple felonies. We're going to stop her." Jennifer explained that Sarah could face charges for theft, identity fraud, elder abuse, and running a criminal enterprise. The evidence Marcus had gathered was solid enough to build a strong case, but Jennifer wanted more. She wanted to catch Sarah and her partners in the act. Working with the police fraud unit, we set up a sting operation. Jennifer arranged for an undercover officer to pose as an elderly woman needing help with her jewelry collection. Sarah took the bait immediately, agreeing to appraise the officer's fake valuable pieces. The day of the sting, I watched from an unmarked police car as Sarah walked into the trap. She was confident, charming, and completely focused on the steal. When the officers arrested her, she looked genuinely shocked that someone had finally caught her. Within hours, the police had arrested Sarah's 3 partners and raided their storage unit. Inside, they found stolen jewelry worth over $1 million, including pieces taken from victims across 3 different counties. My watch was there too, along with items I hadn't even realized were missing from my home. The legal system I had always trusted was finally working to protect people like me, but Sarah wasn't going down without a fight. Once Sarah was arrested, her desperation reached a whole new level. From jail, she started calling every family member and friend she could think of. She told them I was having mental problems and had falsely accused her of stealing. She claimed the police had been tricked by a confused old woman who couldn't remember where she put things. The calls worked on some people. My sister Linda called me crying, begging me to drop the charges against Sarah. She said families should stick together and handle problems privately. Even my neighbor Mrs. Peterson started looking at me with doubt when I walked to get my mail. But Sarah's most dangerous move was hiring a lawyer who specialized in questioning elderly people's mental capacity. Her lawyer filed motions claiming I was suffering from dementia and couldn't make rational decisions about pressing charges. They wanted me declared mentally incompetent, so the case would be dropped. I had to undergo psychological testing to prove I was mentally sound. At 63 years old, while still recovering from hip surgery, I sat through hours of memory tests and cognitive evaluations. It was humiliating and exhausting, but every test confirmed what I already knew. My mind was perfectly clear. Sarah's desperation was showing everyone her true character. The daughter who once seemed sweet and caring was now trying to destroy her mother's reputation to save herself. Some family members finally started to see through her lies. The woman I had raised was fighting like a cornered animal, willing to hurt anyone to escape the consequences of her crimes. As the trial date approached, Jennifer and I worked together to build an unbreakable case. We had Marcus's investigation files, police reports, and financial records that painted a clear picture of Sarah's crimes. But Jennifer wanted to make sure every detail was perfect. She said cases like this often come down to who the jury believes more, the elderly victim or the sympathetic daughter. We spent weeks organizing evidence and preparing testimony from other victims. Ms. Chen, the customer whose wife's necklace Sarah had stolen, agreed to testify. So did 3 other elderly people who had been robbed by Sarah's theft ring. Each story was heartbreaking, but together they showed a pattern of deliberate targeting and exploitation. The most powerful evidence came from Sarah's own notebook, the one Marcus had found in her car. Jennifer had handwriting experts analyze it, alongside the forged checks and documents. Every analysis confirmed that Sarah had been practicing my signature and planning her thefts for months before my surgery. Jennifer also arranged for me to work with a victim advocate who helped elderly crime survivors. She taught me how to stay calm during cross-examination and how to clearly explain the impact Sarah's crimes had on my life. I practiced telling my story over and over until I could do it without breaking down. The hardest part was accepting that I would have to testify against my own daughter in front of a courtroom full of people. But I knew this wasn't just about me anymore. Sarah had hurt dozens of innocent people, and someone had to stand up and stop her. By the time the trial began, I was ready to face Sarah and tell the truth about what she had done. Justice was finally within reach, and I wasn't going to let it slip away. The day I testified against Sarah was the hardest day of my life. I walked into that courtroom using my walking cane, still recovering from surgery, to face the daughter I had loved and raised. She sat at the defendant's table in a conservative suit, trying to look innocent and misunderstood. When I took the witness stand, I looked directly at the jury and told them everything. How Sarah had stolen my watch while I was helpless. How she had forged my signature and used my identity. How she had made me doubt my own memory and sanity. I spoke clearly and calmly, letting the facts speak for themselves. Sarah's lawyer tried to make me seem confused during cross-examination. He asked me detailed questions about dates and times, hoping I would make mistakes. but I was prepared. I answered every question with precision, backed up by documentation and evidence. The psychological tests proving my mental competency spoke louder than his implications. The most powerful moment came when Mr. Chen testified about losing his wife's necklace. He was 82 years old and spoke with a trembling voice about how Sarah had betrayed his trust. When he finished, several jury members were wiping their eyes. The human cost of Sarah's crimes was finally visible. After 3 days of testimony, the jury deliberated for only 2 hours. They found Sarah guilty on all charges: theft, identity fraud, elder abuse, and running a criminal enterprise. The judge sentenced her to 7 years in prison and ordered her to pay full restitution to all victims. When the verdict was read, Sarah finally broke down and cried. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of self-pity for getting caught. Even then, she couldn't accept responsibility for the pain she had caused so many people. As I left the courtroom that day, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: peace. Justice had been served, and Sarah could never hurt another elderly person again. 6 months after Sarah's conviction, I got my watch back from the police evidence room. When I held that Patek Philippe again, I thought about David and everything we had built together. The watch was more than just expensive jewelry. It was a symbol of love, commitment, and the life we had shared. But I realized something important that day. The watch couldn't bring David back, and keeping it wouldn't heal the pain Sarah had caused. So I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I sold the watch and used the money to start something meaningful. With the $85,000, I established the David Hayward Foundation for Elder Protection. The foundation helps elderly crime victims get legal assistance and emotional support. We also educate seniors about common scams and how to protect themselves from people who would exploit their trust. My hip has healed completely now. I can walk without assistance and drive myself wherever I need to go. But more importantly, my spirit has healed too. I learned that I'm stronger than I ever imagined, even at 63 years old. Age doesn't make you weak. Experience makes you wise. I still think about Sarah sometimes. I wonder if prison has taught her anything about the pain she caused. But I've accepted that the daughter I raised is gone, replaced by someone I barely recognize. That grief will always be with me, but it doesn't control my life anymore. The foundation has already helped 23 elderly victims get justice for theft and fraud crimes. Every person we help reminds me that something good came from my darkest experience. My story of betrayal became a story of hope for others facing similar battles. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.